Hey there, fellow netizens. This is Kevin in the editor's chair. Apologies for the deep baritone this time. Fighting a cold this month. It's December, and with December, me and the team are, pretty busy with, holiday prepping stuff. So we decided that for this month, we're going to take a break, but I wanted to have something for you all to listen to. So I did what I did last year and went back into the archives and took some old footage from an old episode and going to be releasing this month a fully remastered edition. And when I was thinking about which one I was going to do, I turned to on November the 6th, 2025. Rockstar Games announced that Grand Theft Auto 6, probably the most highly anticipated game out there right now, is going to be delayed again. This time with the new official release date is November 19th, 2026, which got me thinking about a previous episode that we've done. And so hopefully this is going to be a way of at least tiding you over till both you hear more scandalous games and also to get you through the holiday season thinking about Grand Theft Auto. And I went back to one of our episodes that I think is probably one of our favorites among the group, our episode on the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas Hot Coffee mod. Really influential moment in games history, really fun in terms of a moral panic and a controversy just for so many things that happened in it. Also, a little bit of scandalous games lore. We often joke on our show that we are a Pulitzer Prize nominated show, not even that, two-time Pulitzer Prize nominated show. And that is actually true. A few years ago, video game newbie Phil Thomas, while we were doing our episodes on Dave Grossman, which if you want to check those out, 14-part series in the back catalog, he, as a joke, because we talked about a book that was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, and we learned that it's actually not that hard to nominate yourself for a Pulitzer Prize. And so Phil nominated two of our episodes for a Pulitzer Prize in audio broadcasting. And one of those is this one on the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas Hot Coffee mod. So I thought it was fitting both for what's going on with Grand Theft Auto right now and just a fun episode. So hopefully this will get you through the holiday season. As we've done for the current format of the show, we will be doing an extended remastered version of this that I'll be releasing over the course of two episodes. The one, of course, you're listening to today, and the next one will be coming out in 2 weeks on December the 16th. So I hope you'll stick around for that. And without further ado, let's listen to the fully remastered version of our look at the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas Hot Coffee mod.
Oh my goodness, my piss burns.
Hello, fellow netizens, and welcome to Scandalous Games, the show where we take a closer look at video game-related controversies. I'm Kevin Impellizeri, and I do the research and share the story of a video game-related controversy to my friends.
I'm Elford Stephens, video game enthusiast.
Hi, I'm Phil Thomas. I'm relatively new to video gaming, so you might as well consider me a video game newbie.
And I'm Ryan Weaver. I'm a lifelong gamer on this episode because I'm an avid GTA player. I've played every single one, and I still play it today.
And we're excited to have you on here because today we're looking at the history of perhaps the most famous or infamous mod in gaming history, one that relates to Grand Theft Auto. It's the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas Hot Coffee mod. Does anybody know? Is anyone familiar with the Hot Coffee mod?
I remember when it happened. I never played it myself or anything like that, but I do remember when it happened because I had the game and it was all over the place, people talking about it.
I'm not all that familiar with it, actually.
I heard it wasn't about hot coffee.
Well, that's how it starts. It starts by talking about coffee.
It does. So I'll give you the short version. Obviously, we're going to learn more about it as we go. So developed and released in 2005, Hot Coffee was a mod for Grand Theft Auto San Andreas that unlocked a hidden sex-based minigame that was left in the game's code, which a whole bunch of people got hot and bothered by. I will tell you, cards on the table, this was a tough one to research because there was a lot of things that happened, and many of them are amazingly dumb. This might be the dumbest controversy we've ever covered on this show, but it has like everything you want in a controversy. It's got hubris. It's got moral outrage. It's got shady business practices and so many lawsuits. So buckle up for a fun story. We'll start by introducing you to a fellow who's going to feature into this story. Patrick Wildenborg was born in the Netherlands in 1969. His family first got a computer when he was 15, and like many teens in the 80s, Wildenborg used it for playing games. As an adult, he used his experience as a springboard into a computing career, studied computers in college, and eventually earned a master's degree in computer science in 1995 from the University of Twente in the Netherlands. After college, he worked as a software engineer for several different firms. Now, for the most part, Wildenberg saw himself as a casual gamer. However, that changed with the release of Grand Theft Auto Vice City. It was a game Patrick became somewhat obsessed with. As he explained to a Eurogamer reporter in 2012, quote, "I came to Grand Theft Auto relatively late. Sometime after the release of Vice City, I borrowed the game from a friend. Perhaps it was the setting and the music, or perhaps it was the humor and action. Whatever the reason, I found the game hugely attractive," end quote. Wildenberg tore through the game, completing the main storyline, then all the side missions, followed by earning all the collectibles on his way to 100%ing the game. And conquering all the game's challenges left Patrick hungry for more. So he decided to make some of his own, blending his love of GTA with his career as a software engineer by becoming a GTA modder. Among his notable accomplishments in the GTA modding community was Marina Car Park, a Vice City mod that allowed players to buy a car park where they could store up to 40 cars. Now, just before I continue, because we're going to be talking a lot about game modding, is anyone familiar with that term? Can anybody tell me what modding is? Like, as a short description.
All right. I've done modding for several games, usually Bethesda games I'll do mods for. So I'm familiar with what it is and how you like install it and stuff like that. I don't make them. Well, no, that's not true. I have made like light mods, not like anything heavy where you're making actual code or anything, but I've done like texture replacements and things like that, like swapping things around, swapping armors around Bethesda games, where I've sort of done coding on my own. So I'm familiar with it to some extent.
I would say on a high level, modding is the process of using tools that can be applied to certain games and platforms to take elements of a game and combine them or alter them in ways that the game creator did not intend. And these could be using some sort of utility to give your character special powers early, or to create new maps, or to somehow alter or jailbreak the game in some way.
That's a good description. For the last 10 years, I've been primarily a console gamer, but late 90s, early 2000s, I still had a PC that could handle games. And one of the big things that distinguishes console gaming from PC gaming is that with PC, you still have some access to the source codes. Consoles, and what I mean by that, for those of us who play games but don't do any computer program, is that on a console, you have to go through a lot to really get to the program, at least for somebody who's not really deep into it. But at PC, especially in the distant past, it used to be very easy to do. So there's a whole community of people that actually make like what we now call DLCs. Like people will make these things for free for PC games. And so they do all sorts of things. In fact, some of the greatest leaps in video games have come from mods that people have created for games.
Yeah, some of them can be equal to, or if not better than, like what the actual game company is putting out.
Mm-hmm.
And those people oftentimes get hired by those companies to work on their next DLC.
Yeah, modding is a pretty well-developed scene. You all define it really well, I feel. This isn't what the show is, this particular episode is about, but modding is about as old as video games. Like some of the earliest computer-based games dating back to the 1960s were often modded. There's this game called Space War, which was originally developed by a bunch of programmers at a tech club over at MIT. And that was a game that was some person initially developed, a guy named Steve Russell, and people eventually made alterations and additions to it and things like that. But yeah, it's a really fascinating scene. Yeah, it could be everything as simple as adding a new skin in a game to developing entirely new games based on those assets. So yeah, it's a really complex scene. It's a very active scene, and it's a very old scene in gaming. And like I said, in some ways, even predates commercial video games, which I think is really, really cool about it. So with all the time that Patrick spent on Vice City, you can imagine his excitement in May of 2003 when Sony announced the newest installment in the Grand Theft Auto series, a game that eventually came to be called Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Developed by Rockstar North and published by Rockstar Games, which was a subsidiary of Take-Two Interactive, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was slated to be the most ambitious game in the series, with a bigger open world than its predecessors, comprising, instead of a city, an entire fictional state. It included more diverse missions and mini-games, smarter NPCs, more vehicles, including bicycles, and most importantly to me, the ability to go in water without dying instantly. It only took them 3 open world games to figure that out.
Yes, I remember that. The first thing I did.
That used to be one of my biggest pet peeves in games, when you touch the water and die.
You're like, oh, there's sharks there. You're instantly dead.
The pollution in Liberty City is just so bad that once you hit the water, you dissolve instantly.
Yes.
With San Andreas, the folks at Rockstar hope to push every possible boundary, technical or otherwise. On July the 14th, 2004, Rockstar co-founder and president Sam Houser sent an email to Jennifer Colby, the company's operations director, in hopes the controversial series could tackle yet another taboo. As Houser explained, quote, "We are keen to include new functionality and interaction in line with the vibe of the game. To this end, in addition to the violence and bad language, we want to include sexual content, which I understand is questionable to certain people, but pretty natural, more than violence when you think about it, and consider the fact that the game is intended for adults," end quote. Houser listed some examples of the kinds of things he wanted to add. I'm quoting these verbatim. Blowjobs, full sex, parentheses, multiple positions. Dildo sex, parentheses, including being able to kill someone with a dildo. Whipping, parentheses, being whipped. Masturbation, parentheses, one of the characters is compulsive. This must be kept. Must is in all caps. Among the items Houser's team planned to include was a minigame connected to the game's new relationship feature. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas allowed players to court one of 6 potential girlfriends, increasing a relationship score by taking these girls out on dates. Once the player reached a certain relationship level, the object of the player's digital affection could invite protagonist Carl C.J. Johnson inside for some coffee in the game's parlance. If the player accepted the invitation for coffee, they entered a rhythm-based minigame where the 2 digital characters have mostly clothed digital sex in various positions while the player pressed buttons to build up an excitement meter. The game also triggered a cutscene of the player's virtual girlfriend going down on him. And just because I feel like the word picture is not enough, I'm going to show you a brief clip of what it looked like in action. Let's go here. I think this is about where it starts up.
How about a little coffee?
This is it. She's inviting you in for coffee. Gird your loins for love. Here we go.
Oh,
You're incredible. You should
I'll admit, this is the first time I've seen any video game action quite like this.
I've seen worse.
You're a real professional, baby.
But did you ever see anything before this like this?
Before this, no.
I've never seen this scene.
No, this will be the first time somebody tried to do this, I think.
Yeah. And I would have to say it looks realistic enough that it's not like a caricature or something you could just say is, oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not cartoony.
Yeah, and I will say that the first time I saw it, I was a little shocked by this. I wasn't expecting this. I'd always heard descriptions of it, but when I finally said, wow, yeah, that's pretty explicit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to be mistaken for what's going on there.
So Houser knew he had just handed Colby a very tall order, yet he remained confident she could make a case for keeping it all in the final version of the game, adding, quote, "I know this is a tricky area, but I want to find a way for this to work. The concept of a glorified shop, Walmart, telling us what we can or can't put in our game is unacceptable on so many levels," end quote. Here, I feel the need to briefly offer some context. The thing that Houser was primarily concerned about was that the sex content, the sex minigame, and the other things, you know, the murdering people with dildos and blowjobs and all, and chronic masturbation and all that stuff, might earn Grand Theft Auto San Andreas an AO rating for the Entertainment Software Ratings Board. Are you all familiar with the AO rating?
I am.
Not really.
It's adults only, right? It's equivalent of like an X rating for a video game, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like it would be adults only.
Yeah. I mean, even though MA is supposed to be adults only already, but it's supposed to be 18 and up. But I guess it's like MA is like R and like AO is like X. I would assume.
So is AR for perverse adults only?
I guess, yeah.
So yeah, the AO rating dates back to the origins of the ESRB. So when the Entertainment Software Ratings Board was created in 1994, the AO was made as, you said, Ryan, it was the equivalent of the X or the NC-17 rating, identifying content exclusively for people aged 18 and older. I will tell you, there have been some people who have pointed out the confusion about MA is ages 17 and up and AO is ages 18 and up. And the distinction of 1 year higher being the distinction has been a topic of confusion and debate since the creation of the AO rating. But AO in practice was designed as a financial kiss of death for the games industry. major retailers refused to carry AO games. So like Walmart, Circuit City, Best Buy, all of them would not carry AO games. And if you don't have retailers in the 90s and 2000s, you're just not going to sell games. This meant that there was little to no financial incentive to make games that pushed too far because it risked significantly hobbling a game's potential sales. As a result, you want to guess how many games since the history of the ESRB, since the ESRB was created in 94, you want to guess how many AO rated games are in existence?
5.
I was also going to guess 5.
I was going to say less than 5.
It's actually higher, but not that much. 27.
Yeah.
Since 1994, as of this recording, there were 27 AO rated titles, several of which I will point out will be future episodes for various reasons. The overwhelming majority of games that get an AO rating are for sexual content, bearing such illustrious names as Seduce Me, Playboy, The Mansion, Private Party, All Nude Nikki, and Wet, The Sexy Empire. Also
Nude Nikki. Oh, man.
I assume the video games were, Grand Theft Auto Hot Coffee, Grand Theft Auto 2 Hot Coffee, Grand Theft Auto Vice City Hot Coffee, Grand Theft Auto London 1969 Hot Coffee.
That's a game where you get an STI just by playing it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, my piss burns.
To wear rubber gloves to play that game.
So sexual content is the overwhelming reason why games get an AO rating. Other less common reasons are extreme violence or the inclusion of gambling in a game might get an AO rating. Up to that point, past GTA games had been M-rated games, so appropriate for ages 17 and up. However, the potential inclusion of blowjobs, masturbation, and the like put Grand Theft Auto San Andreas at risk of the dreaded AO. Now, Colby, after I mentioned picking up her jaw from the floor, composed a diplomatic response to Hauser, explaining they would need to figure out how far they could go without attracting an AO rating and thus alienating the game from about 80% of its potential retailers. Nevertheless, Colby promised to look into it and get back to Hauser. On August the 16th, Terry Donovan, another headed Rockstar who oversaw GTA's marketing, wrote back to Hauser with some bad news. The sex stuff needed to be scaled back, detailing in a 4-page attachment a list of things that needed to go, including the coffee-based minigame. For a game with as much money and hype around it as Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, there was too much at stake to risk losing out on the majority of its distribution. Moreover, moral conservatives and opportunistic politicians who already had plenty of issues with the Grand Theft Auto series for all the stuff that was already in those games would have an absolute field day if there were, say, a hidden sex minigame in San Andreas. And that is something in the writing business we call foreshadowing.
I wonder what's going to happen next.
And Hauser was outraged, replying in an email, quote, "This is way, way more than I expected. Not only is it insane to edit comedy like this, look at movies and everything else. To do so is going to be a lot of work and will screw with things. Is this really as far as we can push it? I cannot believe it," end quote. He also took his frustrations further up the corporate ladder, writing to Take-Two chairman Ryan Brandt, quote, "I was pretty shocked by the list. The cuts are everywhere. It doesn't feel like we're pushing any boundaries now. Why bother? I really, really do not want to change this stuff. It feels so wrong at the behest of psychotic, Mormon, capitalist retailers," end quote. Nevertheless, despite his grumblings, Hauser did relent, explaining in an August 17, 2004 email to his team that the sex-based content had to go. This meant no oral sex scene, no BDSM, no killing people with dildos, and no sex minigame. We had to wait till
what about
I was going to say, you had to play Saints Row for that.
Wait, was that
what about autoerotic asphyxiation or flashing, or what about having a suggestive conversation with somebody while holding a hot dog? Like, are any of those? Nope.
They saved that for Saints Row.
Yeah, flashing and beating people with dildos is in Saints Row.
Yeah.
And streaking. There's also streaking. You can streak in that game.
Oh, well, you're going to have to cut that whole joke. 'Cause I have no idea.
Grand Theft Auto crawled so that Saints Row could run.
Yes, basically.
All right, what was I? However, with the looming late October release date, the offending content had to go in a hurry, potentially concerned that removing the minigame might create problems for other parts of the game, or possibly unable to spend precious work hours cutting it out. Rather than completely remove it from the game's code, Rockstar opted to make the content inaccessible to players. As Hauser later explained in another internal email, quote, "We locked it away because there was no other way to get the game done on time safely. The code is very interwoven in GTA San Andreas, and everything reacts to everything else. The impact of yanking something late is too scary." So in the final version, now when the character's girlfriend invited them up for coffee, the game just triggered a brief cutscene of the outside of the girlfriend's place, accompanied by some brief moaning. Now, closing off but not completely removing a game's content was not an uncommon practice. Features sometimes get scrapped late in development, and it's often cheaper and easier to leave in unused assets in the game's code, wrapping it away from players rather than completely expunging it from the final version. You got to bear in mind, this is in the days before patches for console games. It's like you've got to get it out the door and you can't necessarily scrub all that stuff out. And usually the easiest thing to do is just close it off to other players, because the overwhelming majority of players, unless they're really technical, are never ever going to see it. So with the game completed, Rockstar sent its submission package to the Entertainment Software Ratings Board in September. And this is partly another place where we're going to have a bit of an aside. Do you all know how the ESRB rates video games? Like what the process is?
I don't.
I figure two guys like Cisco and Eva would sit in the game in a room. They look at a picture of the cover of the game and they give it a thumbs up or 2 thumbs down.
Just two grumpy old guys.
Wow, that's even more jaded than my suggestion, Alfred. I was going to suggest that they sit somewhere with like a tape measure next to an eyebrow, and as they're playing the game, however high their eyebrow gets, while doing the content is the
Getting very close to an AO there, sir.
Yeah.
We're about to
Bring
reach
that
crisis mode. Crisis mode.
Yeah, that's right.
He's going to
Yeah,
break
this-
his forehead.
Oh no, somebody let the rock in. He's giving it to people's eyebrow. We got to get it something above an AO.
No, come. But I must.
Pulled it from the shelves immediately. Actually, Elford, yours is actually surprisingly close to what they really do.
Oh my God.
So the way it works is that a couple of months before a game's release, game companies have to send a review package to the ESRB at their offices in New York. And the package consists of video footage of the game's most extreme content, which is reviewed by a panel of 2 or 3 raters. And then the raters then assign the game a letter rating based on its age appropriateness. In those days, when GTA San Andreas was made, the range was from EC, which was early childhood, ages 3 and up, to AO, or ages 18 and up. EC is no longer around anymore. Now it'd just be an E for everyone. Since the sex minigame was, for all intents and purposes, cut content, not designed for public consumption, it wasn't included in Rockstar's ratings package as part of the most extreme content in the game. And so the ESRB didn't see it, and the ESRB assigned the game an M rating, like they'd done with all the other Grand Theft Auto games before it. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas released for the PlayStation 2 on October the 26th, 2004, to massive critical and financial success. It garnered overwhelmingly positive reviews and sold over 5 million copies that year, on its way to becoming the best-selling game ever released for the PS2. I second that. It's a very good game.
Yes, it is. It's fantastic.
I just got back into playing it again. I booted up my old Xbox version, and I'm just having a good time playing. That soundtrack, my God, that soundtrack is amazing in that game. Every station is good.
It's the first and only one where you have to eat and work out to maintain your character's physical appearance.
Yeah.
They never did that before or after.
Because it was a pain in the neck to do.
I know. It'd be like having to stop for gas. You had to stop for food so you didn't die.
Yeah. CJ has to eat to live, which was, I think, a little too realistic.
Yeah.
But they experimented.
Yeah, not all the work. I have taken to bringing CJ to the gym very frequently, and he looks hilarious when he gets really buff.
Yeah, that's what I did. Mine was in the gym all the time, doing curls and bench press. So he was all jacked up.
I was playing it. Kate walked in because I have him set up wears a sleeveless shirt to show the guns off, and she's like, "Why does he look like a thumb?"
It's his style.
I think it's kind of hilarious that folks were into going to the gym, but only in a video.
Yeah.
Yeah. Character looking good.
Yeah.
I value this, but only virtually.
Yeah. So with Grand Theft Auto San Andreas coming out as this critical and commercial success, you better believe the GTA modding community was excited to get their hands on the game, to open it up and see what was under the hood. And one such modder, who went by the name Barton Waterduck, came across some, let's say, curious files when they dumped it onto the PC. The files appeared to refer to animations they couldn't find anywhere else in the game, with peculiar file names such as sex, kissing, S&M, and blowjobs. Blowjobs spelled with a Z.
Because of course it is.
Several modders, including Patrick Wildenborg, poured over the files and eventually managed to recreate the animations, and they were treated to, as Wildenborg explained in one post on the GTA modding forums, quote, CJ on the pavement, fucking like a rabbit. As Wildenborg and others continued to dig, the signs began to point to a sex minigame hidden in the game's code. However, despite their efforts, there was no way to access it because they couldn't alter the game's files, unless, of course, there was a PC version. Meanwhile, the team at Rockstar North, riding the game's success, were putting together a PC version, as well as a version for the original Xbox. And Hauser remained adamant that they could bring back the sex content, including the Java-themed minigame, into these new versions. And between November and December of 2004, he and his developers explored ways they could restore the game to its former glory. Some ideas considered included unlocking the content on the PC version with a post-release patch, or potentially selling two versions of the game. One is an M-rated version without the sex content, and the other is an AO-rated game with it in. As such, the team ultimately left the content in the code of the PC and the Xbox versions, albeit still completely inaccessible to players without an extensive technical background. Take-Two sent the new versions to the ESRB for rating in 2005, where it again earned an M rating on its way to a full retail release on June the 7th. And you better believe Wildenborg and the other GTA modders were excited at the chance of unlocking the game's potentially sexy secrets. Possibly to their surprise, the content was still there in the PC version, and Wildenborg managed to develop a mod to unlock it. On June the 9th, 2005, Wildenborg shared his results on the GTA modding site GTA Garage, borrowing the game's euphemism for sex alongside its theoretically steamy content. Wildenborg named the mod Hot Coffee. A subsequent version of Hot Coffee allowed players to see the sex minigame play out with nude models, which were also left in the game's code. Wildenborg also eventually released a mod for the Xbox version, and people were eventually able to unlock the content on the PS2 version by using a cheat device. More on how easy it was to do that in a little bit. And needless to say, this caused quite a stir in the gaming community. Many people were understandably skeptical, especially the claim that the minigame was in the game's disk, that it wasn't something that the modders had created, that it was already actually there. After all, there was no way Rockstar would be reckless or stupid enough to hide a sex minigame in GTA, right? Right? However, Wildenborg and the other modders involved remained adamant that Hot Coffee only unlocked stuff Rockstar had originally included in the game. On June the 13th, GTA modder Digital D published screenshots and a brief video of the minigame in action on the GTA modding site GTASanandreas.net with the title, Hot Coffee Bogus? No way. This then attracted the attention of the gaming press. The same day, Kotaku reported on Digital D's post with the headline, quote, GTA sex authentic and unlocked? 4 days later, on June the 17th, Game Politics editor Dennis McCauley published a longer story examining the potential legal ramifications if Rockstar had in fact left the sex minigame in GTA San Andreas. So McCauley's really following a lot of anti-video game legislation that's making its way through state legislatures and the courts. For more on that, check out our Brown v. EMA episode. And the reason a lot of those laws have been failing in the courts is because obscenity laws don't apply to violence. They usually only apply to sex. Now, if, say, a hidden sex minigame was in it, obscenity laws might apply because it is related to sex. And in Macaulay's eyes, some guys watching these laws, this is pretty fucking bad. According to Macaulay from the post, quote, if, and it is still a huge if, Rockstar built the hidden sex scenes into GTA San Andreas, that might just be enough to have a court agree that GTA San Andreas is obscene and therefore eligible for a legal ban on sales to minors, not for violence, but for sex. So this could be pretty bad. Macaulay followed up his initial post with a deep dive into the technical aspects of Hot Coffee on July the 4th, 2005. Since the first article, Wilden Ward reached out to Macaulay himself, offering to prove the mod's authenticity. Patrick explained in detail exactly how he did it, emphasizing again that his mod only allowed people to access what was already there on the disk. He even offered to do it in front of reporters if people still didn't believe him, explaining in an email, quote, "An easier way is to invite me, put me behind a PC with the original GTA San Andreas DVD and a hex editor, and I'll patch the game with you guys as my witnesses." Smiling emoji. Or emoticon. Macaulay published the results of their exchanges on Game Politics under the provocative headline, quote, "Did Rockstar circumvent the ESRB rating system?" Following Macaulay's reporting, mainstream news outlets began covering the story. And to put it mildly, everybody lost their fucking minds. One of my favorite headlines about Hot Coffee comes from the UK's Daily Mirror, whoever the clear-headed, rational publication ran a story on July the 16th, 2005 with the headline, "Grand Theft Porno, Sex Hidden in Top Game." With the lead, quote, "The top-selling computer game in the UK has hidden porn children can access with a code from the internet."
I'm pretty sure people got up and ran out to buy the game that day. Sales are up for that quarter.
Ads everywhere. What do you got there, son? See this game you're playing. How do you do this?
Let me take some time by myself to inspect this game.
Yes, son. Why don't you go outside and play, and I'll just
don't tell your mother.
Have a look at this.
So understandably, people start coming out to denounce this. And one of the earliest public figures to speak up against Hot Coffee was California State Assemblyman and future convicted arms trafficker Leland Yee.
That's my man right there.
You haven't heard the Brown v. EMA episode, so I'll tell you this. I'm going to cut this part out, Ryan. So Leland Yee introduced a law to ban the sale of violent video games to minors in California. I'm going to mention it in a minute in the script. But years later, Leland Yee was arrested and convicted of massive corruption for, one, accepting thousands upon thousands of dollars in bribes, and the other was working with a Russian arms dealer and a bunch of extremist separatists in the Philippines to smuggle a whole bunch of weapons, including like shoulder-mounted rocket launchers, into the United States.
God,
yeah,
you can't leave out the
video game guns, but the real life ones are fine.
Yeah,
you can't leave out the fact that he started as a child psychologist.
Yes, he did.
Oh God,
he was a child psychologist who thought that that video games are causing all of this harm when he was actually helping cause a whole bunch of real life harm through all of his arms dealing.
Hey, Kevin, you know what Leland Yee and GTA San Andreas had in common?
What's that?
They both had something to hide.
Imagine they both might also be coffee drinkers. I don't know.
I like that type of coffee.
All right, so I will read that paragraph again, but I wanted to give that context, Ryan, because it is so good. One of the earliest public figures to speak up was California State Assemblyman and future convicted arms trafficker Leland Yee. At the time, Yee had a bill working its way through the California legislature that would ban the sale or rental of violent video games to minors. And see our episode on Brown v. EMA for more on that. And the sex minigame seemed to confirm all his worst fears, that video games were warping kids' minds and the ESRB was powerless to stop it. Declaring in a July the 7th press statement, quote, "Once again, the ESRB has failed our parents. Clearly, the ESRB has a conflict of interest in rating these games, plain and simple. Parents cannot trust the ESRB to rate games appropriately or the industry to look out for our children's best interests." The next day, on July the 8th, 2005, the Entertainment Software Ratings Board announced it was opening an investigation into whether Hot Coffee showed that Rockstar had earned an M rating under false pretenses. The rationale was that by not disclosing GTA San Andreas' most objectionable content to the ratings board, that Rockstar may have deliberately avoided an AO rating. So keeping the stuff away from them might have been them attempting to sneak by with an M rating when they had the stuff hidden there. Hot Coffee had put the ESRB in a really difficult position. The system had been put in place in 1994 to offset the risk of government regulation. Now, I say this every episode I mention the ESRB. I promise we will cover its creation eventually. The inclusion of a hidden sex minigame at a time when the industry was battling lawmakers in the courts over whether video games qualify for free speech protection risked destroying everything they had spent the last decade building. Now, in response to the ESRB's announcement, Practically every public critic of video games came out of the woodwork to denounce Grand Theft Auto, Rockstar, the ESRB, and video games as a whole. It is like the ESRB blew the doors off of video game Arkham and the entire rogues gallery rolled out for a soundbite. The day of the announcement, David Walsh of the National Institute on Media and the Family issued a national parental alert, warning anyone who would listen to the M-rated Grand Theft Auto San Andreas contained, quote-unquote, hidden pornographic content. I should also again point out that GTA San Andreas is M-rated, and the rating says it shouldn't be for children, but I digress. On July the 14th, Hillary Clinton, then a U.S. Senator from New York, argued Hot Coffee showed video games need to be regulated like a harmful substance like alcohol or tobacco, and demanded the Federal Trade Commission investigate whether Rockstar had, in her words, gamed the system. The same day, fellow U.S. Senator Joe Lieberman, a name we frequently hear on this show, demanded Rockstar submit all of the game's code for full independent audit. And if you're going to talk about gaming's rogues gallery, you can't have a moral panic without gaming's clown prince of anti-simulated crime, Mr. Jack Thompson.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like he needs entrance music at this point.
So what has Jack been up to?
Lawyer, moral crusader, and all-around mature grown-up Jack Thompson leaped into action against Hot Coffee with his trademark tactics of wild accusations, petty personal feuds, and calling the cops on people. And if it also kept him in the spotlight for the wrongful death lawsuit he just happened to be preparing against Take-Two at that time, well, that was just fine for old Jack. For more on that, check out our 2-part episode on Jack Thompson. Thompson furiously wrote letters to law enforcement officials, including U.S. Attorney General Alberto Gonzalez, demanding they charge Rockstar, Take-Two, and the CEOs of various retailers with distributing sexual content to minors. On July the 14th, 2005, Jack published an open letter to the Entertainment Software Association, that's the lobbying organization in the video game industry, demanding they fire their president, Doug Lowenstein, on the grounds that he was slow to act against Hot Coffee, even insinuating that he had tried to cover it up. Thompson also demanded Lowenstein be fired because Doug was mean to him, accusing Lowenstein of engaging in quote-unquote attack dog tactics and ad hominem jihads against Thompson and other critics. But you know what? Jack is not willing to stoop to Doug's level, and he assured the ESA that despite these slights, Jack would never engage in childish name-calling. I'm just kidding. The rest of the letter devolved into an immature personal tirade against Lowenstein, with Jack likening him to Adolf Hitler and calling him, quote, a thug who demonizes critics of your industry's criminal, fraudulent excesses, who, quote, never met a pixelated prostitute he didn't like. Later, he also challenged Lowenstein to a debate, blazing a trail for countless internet cranks for years to come. On August the 8th, Jack literally brought his fight to Rockstar's front door, staging a protest outside their New York headquarters. Accompanying him were members of a DC-based anti-violence group called the Peaceaholics, who held up signs demanding Rockstar be prosecuted.
Are they addicted to Pizza Hall?
I've got a problem. I have too much peace. As a fun aside, the Peaceaholics, before they staged their march with Jack Thompson, published a list of demands to Rockstar. These included that Rockstar promised to only stock its games in adult video stores, create a fund for victims of carjackings and vehicular homicides, and make a national apology for, among other things, causing insurance premiums to skyrocket. I guess because all of the carjackings.
Okay.
For critics like Leland Yee, Hillary Clinton, and Jack Thompson, Hot Coffee confirmed all of their worst fears about the corrupting influence of video games. The fact that it was hidden in the game's code further proved to them that the video game industry was trying to insidiously warp children's minds, and even the ESRB wasn't enough to hold back depraved companies like Rockstar from destroying the moral fabric of society. And again, I feel like I need to mention that this is an M-rated game. Like, kids aren't supposed to have this game. I know they do. I know when I was a teenager, I played Grand Theft Auto. I know we've all been there, but like, I feel like stepping back, I feel like that the ESRB did what it was supposed to do here. And like the ratings affect point of sales. And after that, it's like people need to watch what's happening, you know?
True.
But for moral critics like Leland and Clinton and the like, it was as though Christmas had come early and Rockstar gave them exactly what they wanted, a smoking gun.
So, Kev, I have a bunch of thoughts. Well, first of all, has someone ever invited you over under the pretext of hot coffee? Like, that has never happened in my life.
Man, me either. All those missed opportunities as a young man.
That only happens in sitcoms.
You know what I've heard? I have some really cool vine plants in my living room. Would you like to take a look at them? I think I've heard.
You like to take a look at my vine plants.
Yeah, they're really interesting. Okay, which is so strange. I didn't understand. But anyway, so like at this point, like there are a couple of different things that occur to me as somebody who works on software and someone who, thanks to you, is now aware of some of the themes in these moral panics, which is one, an easy way to make a name for yourself is to take an oppositional stance to virtually anything that is pushing boundaries in any way whatsoever, so that if they mess up, you can notch a victory.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's just an easy way. Like if you're, Hillary Clinton or Jack Thompson or, an elected member of a state legislature who's actually a gun runner. And like on the actual development side, I think I'll wait till the end of the podcast to get into that.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that, though. On the other side of the spectrum, many gamers rallied to Rockstar's defense. On July the 20th, Wildenborg took down the mod and published a statement on his personal website asserting that while Rockstar did create the content and that it was on the disc, it was only accessible using the mod, that it wasn't something you were going to stumble across while you were playing. And for that, Rockstar actually reached out to him to thank him personally. Admins on gaming message boards, so places like GameFAQs, shut down threads from people asking for the mod, while others in the gaming community just discouraged people from asking about it. If people asked, they said, no, don't share this kind of stuff. And all of that was in showing solidarity with Rockstar. So people kind of rallied around Rockstar over this. Some gamers even thought of running a distraction campaign, perhaps calling attention to one of the other raunchy mods circulating around the internet, such as unblurring the nudity in The Sims 2, or maybe even that ever-elusive Lara Croft nude mod, which people claim was out there.
I had that Sims mod.
Did you?
I mean, no.
Wait, I didn't know about the Sims thing. So, like, unblurring, was this a mod that I was actually modifying things to make it, or was that in the code as well? Does anybody know?
Well, it depends on what you use. You could do like commands in like the command line in the game to actually remove the blur, but there was nothing. It was just looked like a Barbie doll. Like there was nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like looked like a, didn't have like any parts or anything, so you weren't really going to see anything. But then there were mods that added stuff to see.
All right.
I did actually find a letter from Jack Thompson to Leland Yee where he talked about the Sims 2 mod, and he was certain it was real. He claimed, you get to see child nudity and things like that because, Jack Thompson's always doing his research and he's always ahead of these things. There were tons of nude mods. Not that I looked for any of that stuff, but
no, I heard from a guy. I knew a guy that I heard from. It wasn't me.
When they removed when Wildenborg removed the thing from the GTA modding site, one of the other guys posted a really sarcastic message. It's like, dude, if you're really looking for digital nudity, here's a dozen other places where you can look, and he linked to a bunch of places, including a mod for The Sims 2. However, hot coffee was a pretty divisive issue in the gaming community. For example, some argued that Rockstar should have disclosed the minigame to the ESRB, even if it was inaccessible content that they would have known full well that modders would have found it sooner or later and should have just been upfront with it. But others pushed back and said that game companies shouldn't be held responsible for what modders do, because modders are going to do what they want. And in many cases, they're going to be things that the developers didn't plan or envision, and they can't be held responsible for that kind of stuff. Like those people emphasizing that inaccessible content is not meant for players. It was not meant to be seen. More than a few called out the hypocrisy of getting upset over a cut minigame involving mostly clothed polygons rubbing up against each other in a game where you can run over pedestrians and murder sex workers to your heart's content.
Yeah.
A few conspiracy-minded observers even thought the whole controversy was a publicity stunt concocted by Rockstar to sell more copies in a bid for outrage-based attention so shameless it would make running with scissors blush.
That conspiracy theory has some legs to it.
I don't know if I believe that about this one. I think they legitimately just wanted to do it, and it's easier to leave it in and lock it off than remove it.
I'm with that too. I think that, so like Postal, going back to our Postal episode, or Custer's Revenge, going back to that one, those are like small, unestablished companies that they have nothing to lose by a controversy. Rockstar's the reverse. They are a big company. They're one of the big players in gaming. I think that they had everything to lose by something like this. See, I don't think this was, and that wouldn't have made any sense. Like, if they're going to have this be a publicity stunt, why have it for the PC release and the Xbox when you can just as easily have it for the PS2 version? Like, that part doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So, like, even though I'm relatively new to video games, I'm not new to software development. And all of you can probably guess that fully fleshed out features are released in code bases to production, to the public all the time, but are just turned off due to one bit of code somewhere. And if that code were to be changed, or that 0 were changed to a 1, you would be able to get to all of that code. They're just waiting for, companies might be waiting for some sort of court ruling to be made, or to get a go-ahead from X, Y, or Z person, or are simply waiting for a date to start. Like, if there's some code you want to be live for the Super Bowl, that code is in place in production for days or weeks before the Super Bowl starts. And then when the Super Bowl kicks off, boom, that switch is flipped, and then that code is live. So I've certainly seen from the development side that, hey, we coded all this stuff, but it's not allowed to go out in public. Can we just feature flag this? Can we flag the feature? Can we just turn it off? And it's okay because there's no way of getting to it. So that stuff happens all the time. What I will say is, one, it seems like a necessary cautionary tale for the development industry, because it's much easier to feature flag something than it is to pull all the code out. And this is a perfect example of what happens when you get lazy like that. Like, there was an operations director at GTA or at Rockstar Games who warned the president, hey, this can't go out and you get an M rating. But, they clearly didn't take that seriously, because there's some basic things that they could have done, like removing those images that were found by the modders, like the animations. They could have at the very least replaced those with files that contain nothing. And that's a relatively low impact thing to the code base to do, but they didn't, right? They got sloppy, and this happened. So I think it's totally legitimate. And it also seems like the president of Rockstar Games at that time, Hauser, just seems like a person who was used to getting their own way when pushing boundaries.
That's Sam Hauser to a T. And he was riding off the success of having released 2 of the biggest games. I mean, Grand Theft Auto 3 and then Grand Theft Auto Vice City. So it's like, we've made all of these leaps. Let's push it further and further and further. And then there was pushback. I think you make some great points there, Phil, and I appreciate you sharing your technical expertise on that. I think that there was a moment where this could have been avoided. And that moment was when they're developing the PC and the Xbox versions. Because, like, now you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. So the PS2 version, it's a read-only memory kind of thing. The modders couldn't exactly add things and put it onto the PS2 disc unless they're hard modding their PS2 and all that stuff. After the PS2 game comes out, they could have cut that out and just removed it. Like, there's no longer the big deadline restrictions that they had when they were doing it for the PS2 version. They could have cut that out of there, and people would have seen references to it, and the references might have still been in the code, but then it wouldn't have been able to access. They could have. There was a moment where Rockstar could have avoided this whole thing.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
And like, in businesses are social institutions, right? And I'm sorry, Ryan. I'll try to make this short. Businesses are social constructs, and it's kind of based on whatever the social temperature is at that moment. The way I see it, right, and this is just my editorializing, like, who has the control? Do, like, the developers and the people who come up with those fun concepts have the control? Or do the people who, keep back the barbarians at the gate, like your lawyers and your operations directors, do they have the final say, right? And this seems like a situation where the developer, I don't really feel like pulling out all of that code. Oh, that'll just create more headaches for us. And I really don't want to spend that time over the holidays. If that was an organization where the operations and like the regulatory people had more sway, those developers would have been working around the clock, nights and weekends, to pull that code out to still make the deadline. They didn't do that because the developers didn't feel like it.
Insights that I would have no idea about.
You're mentioning how they had all the time in the world to remove it.
Well, not all the time in the world, but...
Well, I mean, they did. They had extra time. I want to mention briefly that, you think about that amount of time they had for that release. They just re-released the game recently, and it was still left in. So how much time do they have then that they still left it in and had to shut everything down because that was one of the things that they forgot to remove, along with licensed music that they don't have licensing to anymore when they just re-released the game. So they had years, and it still was left in.
Did they remaster this re-release, or is it the same game?
It's a really badly done remaster.
Okay.
They used AI to do it, and it didn't scale up right, and the characters looked freakish, and a lot of signs and things were misspelled because of the way they what they used to upscale textures and things. It just didn't come out right, so they had all kinds of problems with it. But one of the problems was that they left the hot coffee in. It was still in the game.
Yeah, to say that the re-release, the remaster version has been a rocky process is an understatement. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit. I'm glad you mentioned the fact that they still found hot coffee in the PC version.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Still in there.
There are parts of it. Parts of it are still in. Yeah, but yeah, we'll talk about that. All right, so where were we? With the media in a frenzy and video game opponents waving their torches and pitchforks, on July the 20th, 2005, the Entertainment Software Ratings Board announced the results of their investigation. The board concluded the sex minigame had been left in the retail versions of GTA San Andreas. They acknowledged that Rockstar took measures to make it inaccessible, and the only way you could access it was through a mod. However, according to the ESRB, the ability for people to mod the game to gain access to it undermined the integrity of the game's rating. As ESRB head Patricia Vance explained, quote, considering the existence of the undisclosed and highly pertinent content on the final discs, compounded by the broad distribution of the third-party modification, the credibility and utility of the initial ESRB rating has been seriously undermined. As a result, in an unprecedented move, the ESRB announced it was revoking the game's M rating, replacing it with the dreaded AO. The board also advised retailers to stop selling the game until Rockstar could, to put it mildly, unfuck it up. Now, it's important to note, however, that they did not say that Rockstar tricked the ESRB or gamed the system, despite what people like Jack Thompson and Hillary Clinton would have you believe. Rather, the fact that players had a means of accessing it, however unauthorized that access may be, made the minigame relevant for the ESRB to know about. I mean, thinking beyond this, it's odds are that if the raters had seen the content, the ESRB would probably have given GTA San Andreas an AO rating. And the thing is when a game gets handed a rating like an AO, they can then go back, like with film ratings, they can then go back and they can cut out the offending content, resubmit it, and it can be re-rated. You see that all the time in movies. So it's possible, again, they could have left it in and showed it to the ESRB, and it could have been avoided there. Now, it might have been a brief news story that they left it there, but then they could have gone back and just re-released it. So that could have happened. So there's a couple of places where what is happening now could have potentially been avoided. Now, all that said, you might be wondering what's going on at Rockstar and Take-Two through all this. Behind closed doors, some like Sam Houser were excited the sex minigame finally reached the light of day, with one programmer going so far as to say in an internal email the mod was, quote, better than an official patch, end quote. However, numerous Rockstar and Take-Two executives were less than enthused. Did you have a point you wanted to make, Phil?
I just wanted to make a bet that somebody got fired.
There are surprisingly few firings in this. Skipping ahead. There was also some finger pointing, as happens in these kinds of situations. When asked, Houser asserted the controversial content needed to be kept in because removing it ran the risk that other parts of the game wouldn't work. However, some disagreed, including veteran programmer Gary Foreman, who was at Rockstar, who later said cutting the content, quote, wouldn't take that long at all, not even days, end quote. And its continued inclusion was, quote, and this is his words, laziness pure and simple.
Phil, it sounds like you were right on the money, man.
Yep.
They just didn't think they would get caught, and they did. And it's important that a cautionary tale like this is out there, you know?
All right, here's how they respond to this now. So Rockstar and Take-Two, that's their parent company, maintained radio silence until July the 13th. Again, the mod is released in early June. So July the 13th, they finally make their official statement. So what do we think they did? Let's do an ABC thing here. Did they A, come clean, explaining the mod unlocked cut content not accessible to the average user who didn't mess with the game's code? B, halt production and rush out patch versions of the game with the offending content removed? Or C, lie their asses off and throw the modding community under the bus?
I'm going to go with C.
They definitely should have done B.
Yes.
I'm going to follow Ryan and go with C.
What do you think, Phil? What's your vote?
I'm also going to follow the guy who's played all the Rockstar games.
Longtime listeners will know that whenever I offer a choice like that, the answer is always C.
Yes.
Rockstar denied any responsibility and claimed the sex minigame had been put into the game by hackers who appropriated and reused assets from GTA San Andreas to create the mod. According to their official statement, quote, so far we have learned that the hot coffee modification is the work of a determined group of hackers who have gone to significant trouble to alter scenes in the official version of the game. In violation of the software user agreement, hackers created the hot coffee modification by disassembling and then combining, recompiling, and altering the game's source code, end quote. Phil has his head in his hands. The company also promised to crack down on the modding community to ensure this thing that was totally not their fault never happened again.
It sounds political, though, for me, because let's say, hypothetically, they wanted to do this, right? The modding community is kind of eating it up. But if they come out, if they say something like, oh, we really wanted to do this despite what all of these anti-video game people say, they could put their company in a situation where they may not be able to produce any more of these games. And we definitely wanted more Rockstar games.
I will tell you that when they make that statement, the modding community, again, they remain firm. They say, this is in the game's content. We know it's in the game's content. We didn't alter anything. So this creates, in the public forum, this means, and this is something a bunch of journalists point out, like, one of you people is lying. And so, and the thing is, gamers almost immediately pointed out that Rockstar was full of shit. Because if that were true, and hackers did create the sex minigame, how did it get on the PS2 version? There's no way they could have added it on there. So how did it get on the PS2 version where people could play the sex minigame in all its glory by using an action replay? On July the 15th, after Rockstar makes a statement, Kotaku published the action replay max codes for people to test it out for themselves. And 2 days later, GameSpot took them up on it, publishing a report wherein they unlocked Hot Coffee using an action replay max and a sealed copy of the PS2 version. It very quickly was revealed that Rockstar was lying, that they were trying to throw the modders into the bus. However, with the rating change, Rockstar was finally forced to own up. Following the re-rating, they ceased production and gave retailers one of two options. Either they could keep selling the game with a new AO sticker, or they could send all their copies back to Rockstar until the game was patched. So basically what you suggested, Phil, what they should have done, this is when they start doing that. Now, most major retailers, including Walmart, Target, and Circuit City, chose to just send the game back. But here's what's interesting. Some retailers sold it anyway. For example, EB Games continued to carry the AO-rated version, although they kept it behind the counter and had people show ID before they could buy it.
Reasonable.
Yeah, I guess that's what they could expect, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's how they would sell any other title with that rating.
Yeah. I guess that means that EB Games had a policy wherein they would sell AO-rated games because most major retailers would not. They just would not carry them.
Yeah. It seems like if anyone would, they would.
I will point out that even when Rockstar had to admit that the sex minigame had been on the disc the whole time, this did not stop them from trying to shift the blame anyway. After trying to blame it on hackers, they turned their finger pointing to the makers of cheat devices like GameShark and Action Replay. And in response, GameShark maker Mad Catz sued Take-Two in August of 2005. They're like, don't get us involved in this too. You're the ones who put it on there.
Yeah, we didn't make it. We just don't want it.
Don't blame us. Mad Catz eventually withdrew the suit on February the 16th, 2006, after they reached a non-monetary settlement with Take-Two.
And that is where we're going to take a break for this episode. So if you're really interested in learning more about the AO rating, the adults only rating, we've actually done a number of episodes on a couple of other AO rated games that might be of interest to you. For example, I recommend that you check out our episode on Thrill Kill, which was a BDSM themed fighting game that was designed to be released on the PS1 back in 1998. And then, of course, there's also the 2015 indie PC game Hatred, which was another AO rated game. Both of them have really, really interesting, fascinating stories that I think you might like. We also reference the development of the Entertainment Software Ratings Board. And if you want a full history on how the ESRB came to be, I recommend you check our 3-part series on that as well. And with all that, that will do it for today's episode of Scandalous Games. If you like what we're doing and want to help the show, subscribe or follow us wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a rating. If you want to learn more, check out our website, scandalousgamespodcast.wordpress.com, where I publish the show notes and the sources for every episode. Our theme music is Occam Sequi by Seek Knowledge via the Free Music Archive, used under a CC BY NCSA 3.0 US license. If you have a question, comment, or an idea for a topic for a future episode, email us at scandalousgamespodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, I'm Kevin Impellizeri, and on behalf of Phil Thomas, Ryan Weaver, and Elford Stephens, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next Scandal. Subscribe to Fat Roll Gaming on YouTube and listen to So We Were Talking About Beast Wars wherever you get your podcasts.